Hi everyone, welcome to the UX+Data meetup. Let's get a round of applause please for David Carroll. He'll tell us about Adblock is a boycott.
So great to be back. That's right, I presented here a couple of years ago as an entrepreneur. I was founding a startup called Glossy.io, which was an AI brain indexing pop culture through magazines. However, that company failed. And one of the interesting experiences that I had trying to start a company in this field was going deep into the beast, seeing how the sausage is made. And once the company failed, I joined many other people who have been deep into the beast and have since left and are now speaking out about it and hoping to try and reform it. And so this talk is about what ails the publishing and advertising industry at this moment, a very serious disease. This talk very much tries to diagnose the disease, and at the end we will offer a prescription, a course of action, a treatment. I've given this talk before. I gave it at the end of last year at the UX Awards in November. It was a tough crowd. It was their annual celebration of all their great accomplishments, and I opened up the morning on a real downer note of how the industry has actually been failing in a certain important area. And I've since iterated this talk to keep it updated, and I probably will need to continue to iterate this talk. It's the second time today that I've been giving this talk. I gave it this afternoon just across Fifth Avenue at Baruch College during their Immersive Worlds conference, which was largely about VR and performance and new technologies where we feel visually but physically immersed in new environments. But I was on a panel relating to advertising and marketing and talked about the invisible layer of data that we're not aware of and the invisible actions of big data and user experience that we're not necessarily aware of, or at least Adblock as a phenomenon is revealing that it is aware of. So I am a member of the faculty down the street at Parsons and teach in the graduate program there, the MFA Design and Technology. And graduates in our program work in this industry, and so I also feel a duty to respond and critique this industry to not only help it, but help the future prospects of the alumni. And in our program, we really try to have an ethos about technology. It's not an engineering program. It's not in an engineering school. It's in an art and design school in a university that is led by the social sciences and performing arts. And so we really try to be critical about technology with technology. We really try to think about the choices we make with technology and the way it impacts society. So I'm going to get started. I had to give this talk in 10 minutes at the panel at Baruch, so I'm going to really unravel it for you here, really give you the full treatment. So I'm excited to do that, and I appreciate being given the time. So we'll start out with the big number, 200 million people. If this was a startup, if this was the user base of a startup, be a unicorn, be worth a few billion. So it's really a tipping point. The report was released last November by a company in Ireland called PageFair, and they, in collaboration with Adobe, released this number. So really the first time that the ad blocking statistic was rigorously measured. And ad blocking's been around for a while. You can see it's existed, at least 10 years. But we see it's on a linear growth trajectory. It's not a fad. It's not going away. Nothing changes. There will be a billion ad blockers someday. So So something has to change. And Doc Searles noticed this, the size and scale and scope of this. He called it the biggest boycott in human history. And Doc Searles is a co-author of the Clue Train Manifesto, The Intention Economy. He's working on a new book. He's also a fellow at the Harvard Berkman Center for Internet. So a pretty influential guy, and he's been observing this for a long time, and he writes a lot about the future of marketing and advertising and how it's going to change in our lifetime. And another important quote that he says that comes out of the Clue Train Manifesto and the intention economy is, a free customer is more valuable than a captive one. And so the whole premise of the ad tech industry and what others are calling surveillance capitalism is to make us captives of a system and actually revoke our freedom. And actually, this is an unsustainable model. And so there's a transformation afoot. Why it relates to you, the UX and Big Data Meetup group, is it challenges the very foundation of your faith and belief in this field, and the faith and belief of marketers in marketing and advertising. This incredible ability to measure the market with such amazing precision. Well, if that was true, we wouldn't be here. Because this great technology would have seen this coming and would have potentially prevented it, seen the warning signs, etc. But unfortunately, there is too much incentive to ignore it, and too much incentive not to look at data that defies your beliefs. Classic confirmation bias. That a lot of big data marketing dashboards are dangerous confirmation bias toolkits. They show you the graph that you want to see instead of the graph you don't want to see. They show you the chart that makes your boss happy and says you're making money, and it doesn't show you the chart that your users are increasingly detesting and loathing it. And this is the failure that has caused this. And this is the thing that the industry has to interrupt or will be demolished. Let's look exactly why. So I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to use some pretty bold ideas that basically the ad tech industrial complex is a subprime market on the verge of collapse. That if you've seen The Big Short recently, you can compare a lot of the same things to this industry. It is a completely opaque, fully automated system. Nobody knows what's going on. There's immense fraud embedded in it, and it's a house of cards. And the ad blocking rate is the equivalent to the mortgage default rate. It's the leading indicator that everything is going to fall apart. So what can we do about it? Why did this happen? That's what this talk is about. So let's look at some pop culture before I assault you with charts and graphs. This is Idiocracy from 2006 by Mike Judge, the creator of Beavis and Butthead, and more recently Silicon Valley on HBO. And this is a scene that shows you what TV looks like in this future dystopia, a dystopia that has fully surrendered to clickbait and ad spam. And so the #1 show is Ow My Balls. And in this world, the president is a pro wrestler. So we are actually really, really close to this world. And this is a world without ad blockers. This is a world where consumers have not said, enough is enough. We will not tolerate this. This is what happens when you just let big data run the show, algorithms run the show, and you get Ow My Balls. Because that's actually what people want. Minority Report, 2002, Steven Spielberg. Famous scene, walking through the mall. Every ad is targeted by name, customized, but actually it's also the instrument of the state's surveillance. There's no difference between advertising and government surveillance. We don't want this world, and we are so close to this world right now, and we can talk about that too. And finally, Mad Men, Season 7, 2014 on AMC, created by Matthew Weiner. It was a moment when the IBM mainframe was rolled in to the agency, and there was a palpable feeling that Don Draper knew this was the moment when advertising died. The computer killed it. And indeed, we'll see today, rest of the slides, how very true this probably is. So now let's look at some charts and graphs, the stuff that you guys love to think about and look at. This is Google Trends of ad blocker, Adblock Plus, Adblock, and then do not track. So do not track was a standard that was created in 2012. And it's built into every browser. You have it in your browser already. And all the industry met at the White House, and they promised to support it. Currently, you can name on one hand the companies that support it. Twitter, Medium, Pinterest, Hulu, nobody else. So for example, if you go and you turn on Do Not Track in your browser and you go to Medium, and you go to a Medium post, and then somebody embeds a YouTube in that Medium post, Medium will warn you. This doesn't support do not track. If you look at this, you will be tracked. And so they're very rigorous about communicating to you as a user the consent and permission to use your data for other purposes. They're totally committed to it, even in their new business model that was announced this week. So there are some leaders in the field. The outgoing FTC chair, Julie Brill, has told the ad tech and publishing community that they blew it when they decided not to adopt this. That if they had adopted this, we would not be here today. There would be no legitimate ad blocking problem, because the FTC believes that customers, users, people have not been given a viable choice, consent, and control to how their data is used by third parties. So the FTC is not going to come to the rescue of the advertising and publishing industry. You guys are on it on your own. You blew it back in 2012 when you went to the White House and you said you'd do it and you didn't do it. The other thing that happened was retargeting. Retargeting are the ads that follow you around. The problem with retargeting is that it blows the camouflage on the surveillance. People all of a sudden realize they're being spied on. And as this technique got used more and more, it created the impulse to learn how to block the ads. So that the way you go on Amazon and you look for shoes and then the shoes follow you around, spooked enough people out to figure out, how do I get rid of this stuff? And then a friend tells a friend, oh, these shoes were following me around, creep me out. Oh, you just download an ad blocker. It's gone. Boom. And this is how it spread. We joke about it on The Onion, but it's actually a very creepy and problematic problem because it has killed the trust in the industry. This is a study by Pew Internet Project, which is really the gold standard in measuring Americans' attitudes about life on the internet. And ad tech is at the bottom of the list. The lonely bottom. There are only 7% of Americans who have any confidence in this industry. This is a crisis of trust. And this is the problem, basically, that nobody trusts ad tech. And ad tech never even bothered to win trust. And this is what we get. And this is why nobody wants to defend them, because they're not trustworthy. Then the ultimate problem is how this affects journalism and democracy. Everyone's like, well, you have to pay. You have to pay for it. You have to pay for advertising. Of course, nobody disputes that. But there's a difference between paying with advertising and paying with privacy. These are two different things. This is a different deal. I'll look at ads all day if you give me free content. But stealing my privacy without my consent, control, or permission is a different deal. and especially how that affects democracy and the news business. So academics are studying this. This is not just an industry topic. We have peer-reviewed researchers at Penn State, University of Pennsylvania, other places, interestingly funded by the government. The Army Cyber Command is funding my colleagues to do research on ad tech. They see it as a cybersecurity crisis. And as you see here, this is a quote from the article by Victor Pickard and Tim Lieber, some of the leaders in this field of sort of ad tech forensics. And while Google and Facebook don't really sell your information, our data is leaked to all the other code on the pages, and they'd include companies like Experian and Axiom, who Experian is a company that determines your credit score. So therefore determines your free will to operate in life, to get a loan. Insurance companies are increasingly using credit scores to determine insurance premium pricing. So there's no regulation or rules here. It's a Wild West. Totally self-regulated industry, and anything goes. And it's actually harming us because evidence has found that it is used to discriminate against minorities. So researchers here in Columbia, led by Roxana Gambasco, have produced a study and an open source toolkit that they can reverse engineer Gmail targeting, and they can get Gmail to target ads at you based on your gender, race, sexual preferences, and other factors that Google says it does not do in its privacy policy. In addition, companies are rematching data back to our email addresses and using both deterministic and probabilistic techniques to connect us back to our real identities, which is entirely possible because Experian and Axiom have them. So the idea that the privacy policy says no personally identifiable information, well, it's actually not true, because there are techniques they use to re-look up our identities back to our supposedly anonymous ones. So the idea of privacy is totally antiquated, and that's also where this talk is going. And this is all peer-reviewed academic research. This is not conspiracy theories. This is not some other competitor who's trying to put these guys out of business. This is the real deal. This is the industry. It's called the Loomscape. And this is a company that keeps track of this crazy market because they are a merger and acquisition firm. And they make money on these companies collapsing and buying them. And they predict that this whole industry is going to collapse and they're going to profit on it. So we're back to the big short. There are people betting against this industry, just like in the movie. It's these guys. And of course, the companies that are public, yeah, they're not doing so good. As ad blocking goes up, the shares go down. Now let's look at the invisible world that you don't see when you visit pages on the web. This is the New York Post. Interestingly, another startup called Mesobit, which was founded by another publishing advertising veteran who left the industry, saw how the sausage was made, and created a company to help publishers know what's going on their pages. Publishers don't even know the companies on their own pages. Nobody knows what's going on. They need companies to figure out what's loading on their own pages. It's that bad. So these are visualizations that Mesobit graciously gave me to drive this point home. So to show a few ads, in Outbrain here, they're just down the corner, they're based on 13th Street, actually. So a lot of this is New York-based companies. Like, this is the New York industry here. And literally hundreds of companies are bidding in real time, synchronizing your cookies
trying to outbid each other to figure out what ads to put on the page, and this happens in milliseconds. This is called cookie syncing, and this is why data leaks all over the place. And it's capturing the content of what you're reading. So the URLs of the pages and the content of the pages are being leaked to all these companies and attached to your cookies, and then even shared with other companies nested inside the tags. And so what Mesobit can do is actually dig into the tags and find the nested tags and the nested tags, and it's like a Russian doll. And then it's even circular, that you'll find the company that started the nest right back at the end. So this is the New York Times. In fact, this is the article lately about the ad blocking wars on the op-ed pages. It's a fireworks show of companies that capture you reading this article to show you the cork or an ad. And so the one on the left is sort of the top level, and then the one on the right is starting to dig into the nested tags. You can just see. So yeah, we read the news, so yeah, we let all these companies know what political leanings we might have. What happens when you go to WebMD and you look up Alzheimer's? Well, you think, oh, they wouldn't spy on me. I mean, this is health information. I mean, my health information is protected. No, it's not. It's only protected when you talk to your doctor or at the hospital. There's only a privacy law in the United States related to the medical profession as a patient. But you're not a patient when you go to WebMD. You're no different than viewing any other site. And of course, WebMD has to make money, and the way they do is spy on you. And look who's there, Experian, the company that determines your credit rating, your ability to operate in this capitalist economy. Let's dig down even. Look at all these companies watching you look up your personal health concerns. There it is. There's the little beacon that has captured the URL and has sent it to Experian, attached to your cookie, and then through probabilistic or deterministic reverse lookups or other kinds of synchronizing tech has attached it to your consumer identity that you look at Alzheimer's all the time. I wonder if you're worried about getting Alzheimer's. Maybe we need to adjust your insurance premium for that. You're probably going to cost your employer a lot of extra money when you retire. But that's not even the only sketchy company here. Add this little sharing button. See these all over the place, the sharing buttons. Every page is littered with sharing buttons. What are they for, really? I have obviously been doing my research, talking to people, and I have found some other, let us say, whistleblower types who have built some of these systems and architectures and feel really guilty about it and are starting to spill the beans. And this one told me that AdThis is, quote, one of the dodgiest companies around. They have the biggest data of all and make it available in any way you like as long as you pay. And these buttons are everywhere, and so on the open market, you can buy user data, just name your price. There's no regulation, total Wild West. Use it for any purpose at all, you have no control over it. It could affect your life, and you'd never know it. But this is not even the only problem with this industry. This industry has a lot of problems, and fraud is equally. There are basically three big problems. There's privacy, fraud, and malware, and we'll get to all three. So the problem with this automated, unsupervised, multi-layered, super complicated system is that it's really easy for bad actors to exploit. And in fact, there are entire botnets that click on ads, and in fact, a lot of the code that loads on your page that slows it down and gobbles up your battery are basically Turing tests. They're trying to detect that you're a human instead of a bot clicking on the ads. looking at your mouse movements, seeing if you move the cursor around like a human, or you scroll like a human. Because otherwise, it's probably a bot, clicking on ads, making money in a kickback scheme. Up until recently, AppNexus, one of the bigger companies that's operating, admitted that up to 50% of ad revenue was fraudulent. Huge problem. And the problem is, everybody makes money. So what's the incentive to stop doing it? You get paid for the ads and so on. We've seen publishers who will stack ads in one tag knowing that bots are clicking most of them anyway. All right, let's look at this internationally. It's a bigger problem in Europe. We see that ad blocking is up to 30%. A third of Germans and French are already doing this. That's why in some ways Europe is ahead of us in dealing with this problem. Greece is even worse. It's like 45%. So there's cultural dimensions to this. In Germany, there's a different perception of privacy than there is in the United States. You know, they had the Stasi and stuff. So it's about 12% here in the US. Let's look at it by age. This is really important. This is really where the future is bleak for ad tech. We look at just the Anglosphere, the English-speaking media consumer group. We stack the US and the UK together. We're up to 40%. 40% of the 18 to 24 bracket blocks the ads in the English-speaking world, generally speaking. And in fact, certain sites that cater to these audiences are reporting 40 to 60 to 80% ad blocking. So the younger you are, the more male you are, the more likely you are to ad block. Mobile ad blocking appeared this past September, so a relatively new phenomenon. And it's actually very low, as you can see. Much higher in China and India. The reason that we think that mobile ad blocking is quite low is because most people consume the mobile web inside Facebook and Twitter. And those browsers are immune to Apple iOS content blockers. You may install them, but they don't work there. So if you want to enjoy the benefits of mobile ad blocking, you need to use Facebook in Safari or download Tweetbot instead. There are alternatives. And we'll talk about later what would be the benefits of that. What's interesting too is there's a company out of Israel called Shine, which is funded by the richest Taiwanese businessman, and it blocks mobile ads at the mobile carrier level. And there is an operator in the Caribbean, and there's an operator in the UK which has signed up for Shine. So basically, imagine if your cell phone provider told you, we're going to block all the ads for you. You just go to our website and you opt into ads. We're just going to kill them all. You go to the site, you opt in. Well, as you can imagine, not many people opt in. So Shine is on the move. I have been told that in 6 to 8 months, they're going to make a big move. I don't have no other inside information about this, but I speculate entirely that it fits T-Mobile's brand image totally to give Shine to T-Mobile customers. And then it's about T-Mobile users will not have ads, and then they will save 50% on their data plan. And then people will say, oh, I'll switch to T-Mobile, there's no ads. It's awesome. And here you go, the spiral, the death spiral, just continues. So what kind of ads cause this? Well, here is another great example of the failure of big data and UX, and the confirmation bias that says these things work great, and they're actually totally harmful. So this is again from PageFair, the Irish company that offers a service to publishers to help them deal with ad blocking. And they have technology that actually defeats ad blockers. And you can see that the most innovative, intrusive, annoying ads obviously piss people off the most, and the more tolerable ones are actually okay, they're actually fine, no big deal. And so the ones that are more invasive and intrusive, annoying, make more money, and so there's this tremendous incentive to keep using them, even though a different chart says, ooh, don't. So how do you get people to turn ad blockers off? So this is a survey of Adblock Plus users. Adblock Plus is the most popular one. And of course, as you would imagine, 70% just don't make the ads so annoying. They're so annoying. But interestingly, 57% say respect my privacy. Much higher than the industry likes to think. They hate when I bring up the privacy issues. You really get them angry. Load faster is important. Relevant ads is interesting too, because you have to invade someone's privacy to make it relevant. So this is kind of a controversial issue, but there's only 20% of the user base that are, they're gone. They're never gonna come back. But actually 80% will renegotiate the deal. And this is the opportunity for this industry to save itself. I don't know if they realize this, but this is what some of the data suggests. Another huge myth is that young people don't care about privacy. You hear this all the time. The data does not suggest this either. In fact, it's the opposite. Old people don't care about their privacy. Young people are actually totally paranoid. If you look at these charts, the younger you are, the more likely you are to clear your cookies, disable them altogether, and delete and edit posts. So to exhibit what we call privacy defensive behavior. Because they get it. They know what's going on. Some argue that the fact that Instagram engagement is down 40%, Facebook sharing plummeted, and Snapchat usage exploding. Why? Because Snapchat is an inherently privacy positive kind of platform, and that you don't share to everyone, and it disappears, and you're not leaving this trail behind you wherever you go.
It's also a gimmick, a huge gimmick, Snapchat.
We can get into that in the Q&A. I would love to have that debate. I mean, not debate, I'll probably agree with you. I've read the privacy policy, and I know some of the advertising plans. Apps are also a huge problem. This is another academic study. 73% of free Android apps leak your data all over the place to third parties without your consent or permission. There's no such thing as a free app. It doesn't exist. This is 47% in iOS. So, somewhat better, but still a concern. So 93% of Android apps tested connect to shady domains. You look up the registration on these domains, you don't even know. They could be in the Panama Papers for all we know. So this is the Wild West that affects apps as well. There's only been, to my knowledge, one reporter who has written about this, and he's someone with the job security to say so, and that's Walt Mossberg, formerly from the Wall Street Journal, co-founded Recode with Kara Swisher. And here he admits, they are in effect a form of spyware, scooping up information about what people do online without their knowledge or permission, supposedly in return for useful personalized ads. Most reporters are afraid to write about this because the revenue side says, no, you can't say that, you can't talk about that. And I know this because I've been interviewed and I asked them, are you going to say this? No, they say the revenue side won't let us talk about that. The CEO of the Publisher Trade Group, so the lobbying group and representation of premium publishers, so the Times, Condé Nast, etc., all this is their lobbying group. They don't want this technology either. And in fact, it only represents a single digit of their revenue. Behavioral advertising could disappear tomorrow and the premium publishers would live another day. They don't even want it or need it, and they see how it's damaging. In fact, they think that they're getting screwed, in fact, by it. They don't like the fact that these are all the things that load on the page when you visit a site. They think it's a broken system too. So in September when iOS 9 came out, the Times started to report about this. I was quoted in this, and it's sort of how I all of a sudden became the expert on ad blocking. It's so funny how that works. Later they did an article at the data consumption of ads. And it turns out that we pay for the mobile ads with our data plan. In fact, it costs about $10 a month in data to visit a newspaper site every day. So we pay for ads on mobile once with our data plan, twice with our data privacy, and then thrice if it actually works and we buy the product. And of course, you know that advertising is priced into the cost of products. So this is an example of why even the Times tends to recommend its users install ad blockers on mobile. And companies like Shine exist. And Casey Johnston wrote Welcome to the Block Party on the All, which is an independent publication. These are the small sites that are getting destroyed by ad blocking. Because they really rely on the ad networks to outsource the ad sales force. So big premium publishers, they have big ad sales teams, they can sell direct if it came down to it, no big deal. It's the little guys that are getting destroyed by this. So she wrote about this, a really important piece when this first came out. And no surprise, just this week, the All announced it's moving to Medium. It can no longer afford to be on its own because of ad blocking. And because they see Medium as a safe haven that will protect them and will protect their users. That users' privacy and trust will be protected on Medium. They will not be abused. The United States and European news organizations called for a redesign of advertising. They said, please, you have to rethink this. And in fact, a cover story in Bloomberg did a sort of expose on the fraud issue. Great article. It's amazing to read this article. And in fact, Bob Hoffman, a veteran ad executive, critic, his blog is Ad Contrarian. If you like this stuff, he's hilarious. And look at this. I can think of nothing that has done more harm to the internet than ad tech. Ouch. Burn. Back to Doc Searles in remarking on Shoshana Zuboff, who is a distinguished professor at Harvard. She has been writing about this, and she has a new book coming out about surveillance capitalism. And here he talks about how we're treated like animals, basically. We're tracked when we leave a site, and it's all about appetite for big data and personalized ad messages. But he says this fits Shoshana Zuboff's 3 laws of technology. First law, everything that can be automated will be automated. It's true. We've seen this. It's happening. Number 2, everything that will be informated will be informated. It's true. It's happening. And third, most important, in the absence of countervailing restrictions and sanctions, every digital application that can be used for surveillance and control will be used for surveillance and control, irrespective of its originating intention. So you download a free game, you think it's to entertain you while you ride the subway. You don't realize that it is selling your location data to an ad network so that it can figure out if you saw an ad on the way out of the subway. And Verizon and AOL are definitely building that technology. So the IAB is the trade group of the ad tech industry, and Randall Rothenberg is the CEO, and they admitted that they messed up, he says. But this is the most non-apology I've ever heard. This is great. I'm going to read this out loud. It's just, he's an incredible writer. Through our pursuit of further automation, Shoshana Zuboff's rule, and maximization of margins, during the industrial age of media technology, we built advertising technology to optimize publishers' yield. It's not our fault. Of marketing budgets that had eroded after the last recession. Looking back now, our scraping of dimes have cost us dollars in consumer loyalty. You must have seen the Pew chart. The fast, scalable systems of targeting users with ever heftier advertisements had slowed down the public internet and drained more than a few batteries. We were so clever and so good at it that we over-engineered the capabilities of the plumbing laid down by, well, ourselves. This steamrolled the users and depleted their devices and tried their patience. But we made $23 billion. So they do have an opt-out. It's those little triangles on some ads. It's called ad choices. This is hilarious. I don't know if you ever tried to do this. If you can find the page after you click through, it's like hidden in a click here button that has no underline or coloration. You finally get to this interface that's the worst UX you'll find. Totally designed not to do it. And then when you finally get to the point, you get this message. I don't allow third-party cookies to be enabled on my browser because I don't want any old site to track me wherever I go. You know, it seems like a reasonable thing. Like, you don't want that to happen. Well, then it doesn't work. So basically, you have to make yourself totally vulnerable to all trackers all over the web, wherever you go forever, in order to opt out from a few participating companies. And they're not opting out of tracking you. You're opting out of being targeted. They're still tracking you. So you just choose not to see targeted ads, but they're still collecting and gathering and assembling your profile. So this is totally just hilariously broken. And if you go into their code of conduct, you can see that it's just a sham. It's awful. So Vintage Siglowski is the creator of Pinboard, which is a subscription-based bookmarking site. And he's given an amazing talk on this subject, and he's no fan of it either. Hence, his site is subscription-based. And he has likened ad tech to tobacco, smoking. It's gonna be something that we look back on as a really dumb thing that humanity did. It caused so much harm. It caused cancer for no good reason. Single digits of revenue. What's the point? Actually, cancer is a big problem, and this is where the shit is gonna hit the fan. There is a class action lawsuit in California against Facebook because Facebook share buttons are all over cancer sites. American Cancer Society, etc., etc. And Facebook sells targeting based on these health conditions. So this is going to be a showdown between Facebook's lawyers and whatever this class action is, and you can expect to see more class action lawsuits of users banding together and saying, what the hell is going on with my data? What are you using it for? What if it's being used to discriminate against me? By simply looking at a cancer site, are you now, or let's not say cancer, let's just say you look up irritable bowel syndrome. And now all you see are irritable bowel syndrome pharmaceutical ads. This is not what we want. So it's coming down to the people versus Facebook in the sense of, do we want this future where one man stands reign over all of us in VR goggles? The publishers are being pushed into Facebook's hands.
Who's that man?
Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, yeah.
I doubt it.
And the publishers, sort of had a Faustian bargain by outsourcing their advertising industry to DoubleClick 20 years ago. That's when it started. When they decided, oh, we're not going to do ads, we're just going to outsource it and we'll embed a little tag and they'll take care of it. That was the Faustian bargain. This technology is 20 years old. DoubleClick was founded in 1996. It is a decrepit, creaky, collapsing technology. And Facebook works great and is generally immune to ad blockers. And so we are at a precipice here of our ad blocker is going to chase the publishers right into Facebook hands, and then we will lose control over what news we see. It's all going to be on the newsfeed algorithm. and whatever the algorithm decides. So Errol Balkin is an activist who writes a lot and gives a lot of talks about the dangers of letting Google and Facebook take over the world. So now you're thinking, yeah, maybe I should get an ad blocker. Sounds pretty good. Choose your ad blocker wisely. There are lots of shady guys in this business too. The most popular ad blocker is Adblock Plus by a German company named IO, which is basically run by this guy, Vladimir Palant, a privacy-minded Moldovan, apparently. The thing about Adblock Plus is it has what's called a paid whitelist. So companies can pay IO, the makers of Adblock Plus, to show you quote-unquote acceptable ads, which are turned on by default. And actually, tracking is turned on by default. And guess who pays to be in the whitelist? Google. So you can't avoid Google simply by downloading Adblock Plus, and double click is there and so on. So this is an academic study out of Penn State University, the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, again, funded by the military, cybersecurity. And they wanted to look at the impact of these acceptable ads, and they reverse engineered it and see that the whitelist is growing exponentially. So at what point is the whole system going to collapse? And is this extortion? The publishers and the status quo think this is just extortion. It's not a big presentation, but another new ad blocker has appeared called Brave by Brendan Eich, who is the creator of JavaScript. He invented it. He led Mozilla for a time before he was ousted based on a donation that he made to a political campaign that the people of Mozilla disagreed with. And he wants to pay publishers to reinsert safe ads and then pay users in Bitcoin to turn the ads on. Today, a group of newspaper companies took legal action against Brave, saying that this is ad injection is a violation of their copyright. Interestingly, Adblock Plus has been taken to court 5 times in Germany for its acceptable ads and has won 5 times. Again, because when you lay down the case, the industry has not given choice to consumers. The only choice offered is these ad blockers. So the court does not look favorably upon this industry. If the industry said, no, they should just turn on do not track. Oh, we don't support that. Sorry, guys. You gotta do something for people, for consumers. Okay, now it gets really ugly. Malware. The problem with the system is that if you know who to call, you can get arbitrary code loaded on people's computer. JavaScript loading from a sketchy domain is totally allowed. Nobody knows what's going on. The fact that we allow JavaScript to run from a shady domain that you can't even trick back is crazy. And so what happens is you call the right person, oh, I want to buy an ad, okay, sure, okay, we'll run it. The ad is totally shady. It looks like a system OS prompt. It fools people to enter their password, installs an executable, boom, malware. This happens, and it happens on big sites. Forbes, New York Times, hate to say it. Oh. So malware and ransomware is an increasingly massive problem. So again, this industry has a lot of things to clean up if it's going to stand on its ethical high horse, because subjecting people to these risks really, really problematic. And they can't control it. Nobody knows what's going on. Best thing to do is to block it. In fact, you can use ad blocking on the server side when you buy a campaign. So I won't get into that. Edward Snowden, of course, says everyone should have an ad blocker for security purposes. Because he knows. And of course, there are legal issues here. So basically what companies are doing is they're tracking our web history. The FBI needs a warrant to get that information. So if the FBI can't get our web histories, but 300 companies are gathering it on every page you visit, think about that. It's crazy. Last year, according to a report by Forrester, they predicted that 2016 would be the tipping point in privacy. Because I gave this talk back in November, first time. We're pretty on track. FBI versus Apple, pretty huge. The Panama Papers, pretty huge. We're only in April. Still more time to go to make 2016 a pivotal year for privacy. We're waking up. It's definitely happening. We're starting to understand what is going on and what are the implications. And of course, Frederick Filou, who runs Monday Note, also moved to Medium this week. Has been looking at this, and it's like, this is going to change everything. It just has to. There's no way it won't. It's going to change the industry fundamentally. Because there are serious security flaws. In fact, CNBC, it was really trying to do the right thing. It ran an article trying to teach people how to make a strong password. But it didn't run the page on a secure connection. So people are typing in their password to see if it's strong, and it's sending it to all the ad tech on the page. So people leak their passwords to like 30 different companies. They pulled this page down, but just goes to show like how fragile this whole system is. It's just insane. So, are you going to take the blue pill or the white pill? Are you going to realize that we are naked on the internet and we have to put on some clothes, protect ourselves, and realize that if you are not paying, then you are the product, not the customer. You're being farmed for your data. And the intent is to change your behavior at scale. That's the whole idea. So what is going to happen? Will big platforms swallow up publishing, advertising, and audiences in one big gulp? And then we'll be really in the matrix. Facebook and Google will literally own everything, control everything. This close. Will ad tech and this media buying industry show any restraint, even though they make money hand over fist? The margins are so high in ad tech that ad tech executives have told other people in publishing and so on that they're worried that their margins are too high. They literally have said, we're worried that our margins are too high. We're making like 40, 45%. We really should be making closer to 10. This sounds like The Big Short, selling credit default swaps and collateralized debt obligations. When you make too much money, there's something wrong, actually, and they know it. Will publishers sell direct? Well, Times Studio is here. It's already happening. That's native advertising. And what are the small people going to do? They're going to go to Medium. It's going to greatly impact the open web and the freedom of people to put up a site and get and run it on advertising, because the system is rotten. And will people recapture their privacy or not? And really, this is where this is leading, is us to realize that we have to redefine what privacy is, because the companies do it for us in these so-called privacy policies. But you know what's funny in these privacy policies that nobody reads? They never define what privacy is. They define what privacy is. They never tell you what they mean by that. Oh, it's just privacy. You have privacy. When you have, I have kids, when you first use the word privacy with your kid, it's when you're in the bathroom and you're trying to go to the bathroom and they want to be with you. And like, can you give me some privacy? The first time you teach them, I want to go to the bathroom by myself. That's the first time in your life when you're taught what privacy is. So we sort of think about like privacy as the right to keep a secret. Seems fair. It really is, it comes from the right of seclusion. It comes from property in a sort of feudalistic age where you lived in villages, you had no property, there was no privacy. It was actually in the Enlightenment where private property was instituted that the idea of privacy was created, that you had your domain, and what you did in your house was your right of seclusion. But in this age where we live online, we don't really live in our house so much. We live on the network. We live on these services. Privacy is something else, actually. It is the right to construct your own identity, to define who you are. That's actually what privacy is. And that's what they don't want you to think. They don't want you to think that this is what privacy is, because they want to construct your identity and sell it. So actually, the way that we get out of this is privacy is the right to own your own identity. This is the answer. When you own your identity, then you control your free will. You don't let Experian figure it out, sell it to Axiom, decide your credit score, which then goes to your insurance company, which then figures out whether you'll get cared for when you get Alzheimer's. Because that's where we are. You need to seize control of your identity in order to maintain your free will in this world. So it's about privacy by design. Privacy will sell. Apple has shown this. Interestingly, I don't have the data here, but I have an Apple Watch. Apple Watch is the only fitness tracker that has privacy capabilities designed into it. So the Bluetooth ID is constantly changing so that it can't be tracked over time, but Fitbit does not change its Bluetooth ID. So your Fitbit is constantly broadcasting the same ID, and yes, your gym is listening to it, so that when you go in, it knows you're there, and all kinds of stuff, and beacon or all around listening for Fitbit Bluetooth ID. No privacy protection built into Fitbit. And interestingly, I participate in a research study by Wristly.co about Apple Watch owners, and they did a special survey during the FBI debate when it was really peaking, and they were asking, how does this change your opinion of Apple going up against FBI? And we got the results of the survey. Apple fighting FBI dramatically improved the brand perception of Apple. And there was zero negative effect. Fighting the government cost Apple no brand damage among Apple Watch users. So this sells. People want it. They want to buy it. So this idea that people don't care about their privacy is less and less true the more and more people figure this stuff out. So how do we solve this? Well, a last slide, then we'll take Q&A. A couple weeks ago, I published this piece on recode, Beyond the Eyeball. We're making some progress at blocking. And I've been invited to meetings among the industry, believe it or not. They want to hear what I have to say. And I write about the meeting here, and this was in Europe. So like I said, Europe is ahead of the US in terms of dealing with this problem, because it's much more severe there. And there was, the IAB was there, the publishers were there, the EFF was there, their consumer advocates were there, Google was there. This is like a summit of stakeholders in London at Mozilla. And we came up with a 4-point plan. Ad agencies were there even. I mean, everybody was at the table. We came up with a 4-point plan. This is the re-summarization. First one is, let people complain about advertising. It's really important that people can complain about it. You have to say, I hate this ad. And if advertisers get a negative feedback, like, our ads suck, it's gonna hurt their feelings, and then they're gonna make better ads. There's no way for people to tell your ads suck. And so that's why the ads suck, is they only have data and charts that shows the ad works, that 0.01% click time. Way! We got 2 humans to click on it, and 4,700 were robots. So there needs to be a negative feedback loop to balance the positive feedback loop of the economics. So that everybody agreed about this. And ad blocking shows that people want to complain about advertising. Second one is more brand ads, less ad spam. That the direct marketing junk mail that dominates our ecosystem is because it's too cheap to run. Running junky spam ads is cheaper than direct mail. It actually costs more to download them than to buy them. So you pay for the junky mortgage ad more than the person who bought it. It costs more for you to download that than to buy it. So the system is totally out of whack. The other problem is the targeting mechanism itself is privacy invasive because we're buying eyeballs instead of placements. So back in the old days, you would buy an ad in a magazine or on a billboard, and you'd buy that placement. So we should go back to buying an ad in a publication. This is what native advertising basically is. Buying a placement in a publication, not a separate thing that's 400 companies bid in real time to decide that you should be on that particular ad at the particular time. This would solve the privacy issue. Boom, solved. And it would also solve the security issue of malware and bots. This would solve things so massively. Going back to the old-fashioned way of doing it. Because the ad tech model is inherently flawed. And then measuring satisfaction rather than just eyeballs, impressions, clicks. This meaningless proxy for an abstraction. The impression is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. Because you don't even know if they actually saw it. And the click is, again, it pushes the whole model towards junk mail, towards spam, towards needing to click. When there's a tremendous value in just signaling brand confidence. So saying, we're going to pay for ads because we believe in our product. And we think you should too. That's why the ad's here. You don't have to click on it. We just want you to see that we believe in our product. And that's what advertising is. Coca-Cola are just there to say, it's the real thing. Facebook advertises on TV. Why do they do that? They're doing that to tell you that Facebook's going to be around forever. Just keep doing Facebook, we're going to be around. Don't you worry about us. So this idea of balancing negative and positive response could measure satisfaction and really change the metrics and dynamic, because the metrics create the perverse incentives. And that's the problem. They used the wrong metric and it created this mess. So that's my last slide. I'm really eager to take questions, comments. Other possible solutions are being discussed too that are not here. But thank you so much for your time, your attention. That's what's being sold, your time and your attention. So I want to thank you for selling it to me.
My 25-year-old daughter has around 2,000 Facebook friends. I know everyone on my Facebook page that I very rarely visit. I certainly don't live there. Granted, I'm a sample of one, but among the people I know, have you looked at whether the greater rate of ad blocking, greater rate of cookie deletion and such is due more to perhaps greater familiarity with the technology rather than the greater interest in personal privacy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are some good academic studies on teens and social media and really digging into this particular idea. There's a really well-known professor out of UNC Chapel Hill who also writes occasionally journalistic pieces, Zeynep Turkci mangling her name. If you go on my Twitter, I retweeted her paper today that basically looks at what you're asking. Is like, what are the attitudes about Facebook in particular, and how does that correlate to ideas of privacy and so on? And when you look at sort of from an anthropological perspective, young people highly curate their identity on these networks. So it's not a binary on or off, share or not share. When you look at a really granular level, you can see tremendous thought and care actually does go into what is shared, why it's shared. We also observe on Instagram, teens will manage multiple Instagram accounts to manage multiple identities to multiple groups, and will go back and delete posts that did not receive a threshold of likes. So this like tendency to curate an image, that is actually the same idea of taking control of your identity. So it's not about keeping secrets. It's about cultivating an identity and controlling it in whatever ways you have. So when you redefine the idea of privacy, the behavior starts to make a lot more sense.
How can you cultivate your identity online if you're being targeted by advertising by what you're posting? So the environment that's created.
Can you take the mic?
So the environment that's created online by advertisements, how are you able to cultivate your image? And so I think it's interesting that what you said earlier about how, to her question, where young people are all online and trying to create an image, that image is part of what they're accustomed to, what they've grown up seeing with advertisements. And so I just want to know what you think about, like, you're talking about cultivating an image or cultivating an identity or having an identity online, or even to the point of saying that people have control of their identity online or have control of who they are in general. How do you deal with that? How do you present that? Or how do you handle having those difficulties and those challenges while being online? So she talked about having 2,000 friends on Facebook. That's an absurdity. It's ridiculous. And so she said she has like maybe 50, 60. She knows those friends. And so how do you help young people? How do you make sure that they are doing the right thing so they can be a person that's involved in their society, that's able to be a functioning person in their society when they are constantly being attacked by advertisements?
Sure.
So I mean, you seem to be on top of your game with this. So.
Well, I mean, there's not an easy answer to your question, and I think it's a constant negotiation. So I think my response is there's no ideal platform yet. I think there is an increasing demand for one. I think that so there's the ideal situation where people are totally in control of their identities is not there. We don't have it. People like to conduct behavior that makes them feel more comfortable, but we're a long way from the situation I think we probably need. So, but I think it's not a binary. There's not, you either have privacy or you don't. And in fact, Americans are actually, research shows from Pew that Americans are actually really savvy about the trade-offs that we make. And some in instances, we understand why it's worth it, and other times we think it's not a good deal. So it really comes down to cultivating a literacy about identity and data and the implications of all this. And the greater you develop your knowledge and literacy of this, the more empowered you can become to make good decisions and do things that are right for not just yourself, but for the democracy. So installing an ad blocker is actually very harmful. It actually hurts business. But what choice do people have?
Do you see possibly a technology which would allow an individual to actually be aware and therefore control the access to their identity? So that it becomes a real-time database that they can actually survey and then control that database of access. That's a technology issue.
So Doc Searle, so I mentioned at the beginning, he has a project at Harvard called Project VRM. VRM stands for Vendor Relationship Management. It's the opposite complementary interface to CRM, which is Customer Relationship Management. So in his vision of VRM, basically the ad blockers are the first step. It's like, fuck off. And then VRM appears, and then you then create your data identity that then interfaces with CRM so that when you signal to businesses, I'm interested in these kinds of products and services, and I want this company to have a relationship with me. I like this company. I want to be a free customer, not a captive one. I want this company to advertise to me. So you flip it right over, and then you maintain the ability of businesses to reach customers, because that of course needs to happen. So it's a grand vision. There are many startups who would fit into the category of VRM. It's a big struggle, and VCs are not dumping money into VRM. They're still dumping money into ad tech. I don't know why. And so, you know, there's a long way to go, but I think there are some principles and startups and so on. There's also conferences where this is discussed. There's the Internet Identity Management Conference and so on, where the whole idea of maintaining a protected internet identity and the architecture of that, how that would work, lots of smart people are thinking about that.
Something I think about a lot is that ad tech follows from the web technologies platform that allowed a lot of this to happen, which is to say, and I'm guilty of it, I'm a web developer, we inhabit a virtual slide zone of technologies, and I'm wondering where, when, who should we be calling on to address an ethical, technical imperative in the web platform world.
It's nice to meet you in person. We know each other on Twitter. It's always good to meet people in person. So the ethical problems of being a web developer. So a couple of things. Errol Balkan is a guy who writes a lot about the duty of ethical design and deciding what that is and then how to practice it. So I'd read up on him. There's also a good site called darkpatterns.org, which catalogs just awful things that UI people do to manipulate people and use behavioral economics against us. So yeah, I think we need to develop a set of best practices that we decide to make a better web, and we know that the interfaces that we make are the architectures of our culture and our democracy. And so yes, it comes down to developers and engineers saying, I want to make it better, and I'm going to do it in JavaScript. So that's why it's important to talk to these audiences, and to, when your boss tells you, no, hide the check box or the thing and don't have, you know, no, that's not right, we shouldn't do that, we're going to lose our consumer trust, it's going to be harmful to our customers. You might have to have some tough battles, because money tends to put the short order first, and kind of have to take the long view of, like, the most important thing you have with your customer is their trust. That's the thing you mortgage away. And so what ad tech did is it mortgaged away the trust, and you can't get that back.
So you mentioned earlier that some of the ad blocker companies are kind of shady, selling, whitelist access to the highest bidder. How can we be sure that the ad blocker companies are not actually tracking us and selling our data to the highest bidder?
Yeah, this is a big issue. If you're going to install an ad blocker, I would be very careful with that choice. So Adblock Plus has a business model, which you can look at an academic paper, which is independent. You can see that they do allow tracking, and the default settings are that way accordingly. So I don't recommend Adblock Plus. If you want an endorsement from me, I would recommend downloading Privacy Badger from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. This is an ethical ad blocker designed by a nonprofit, open source, for the express purpose of convincing the ad tech industry to clean up its act, and it rewards ad tech that honors do not track and punishes ones that do not. So Privacy Badger, nonprofit, open source, advocacy. On mobile, Mozilla Firefox Focus is a iOS 9 content blocker, expressly for the purpose of trying to protect your privacy. So yeah, if you're making an ethical choice, then you have to be an educated consumer and make choices that are based on sound and research. Like, the whole industry expects us to do the homework. They expect us to do the work. They don't do it for us. So it's an education process. And one of the things is, when you start to meet people in the industry, everyone in publishing has an ad blocker installed. Everyone in ad tech has an ad blocker installed. Like, it's insane. So you have to make good choices, and even some ad blockers aren't clear about what goes on under the hood. So I would look for transparency and business motives, and generally try to go with open source, non-profits at this stage, because otherwise there's an unknown imperative. Back here.
Just a question. I feel like there's an assumption that people in multiple Facebook account is directly related to the people adding that blocker. I'm not necessarily see the relationship on that. Like, for example, people have multiple accounts on the social network. They maybe just want to break down their own social group and have multiple identity.
Can you hold it for me?
They maybe just want to have multiple identity among their social groups, not necessarily directly add to the advertising on the website. And I installed Adblock, but it's due to especially when you're doing free video online, and you just want to have anything to deal with your content. So the number is based on the assumption that the Adblocker people are directly related people concerned about the privacy. I'm not sure the relationship is so closely related.
So the multiple studies are looking at why people install ad blockers, and there's no study that perfectly correlates to the other, but I have seen 3 separate studies where privacy is in the top 3 concerns. Ad tech people, when I tell them this, they go ballistic. They hate this. And they tell me, well, of course people are going to say they care about privacy when you ask them. But to me, that just reveals how shady they are. To me, that's like, well, then you're just a sociopath. I mean, that's what it says to me. That privacy has no value. It's there to exploit. So I think if people self-identify, they have a concern, and then to not respect that is sociopathic behavior, basically.
So it wasn't quite an advertisement, but there was a couple times you brought up the sort of new Silicon Valley publishing platform, Medium, which of course is run by Ed Williams, the previous co-founder of Twitter. And considering that his last venture is trying to desperately now go the ad tech route and monetizing people's data, why is it that you're so hopeful that Medium this time will be different? Sure.
So Ed Williams has been semi-famously interviewed, and a couple of years ago he said, ad tech is on its last legs. So he also believes that the whole house of cards is going to collapse. So for me personally, their commitment to do not track earns a lot of trust in me personally. I think it's the right choice for the industry, and it solves the privacy problem. It also solves the fraud problem, because ad click fraud bots are stymied by do not track as well. So I wouldn't say that Medium is going to deploy ad tech in the traditional sense. On the contrary, they're going to do contextual placement, so it's more like native advertising. It's more about buying placements in publications rather than independently auctioned on a high-speed trading desk kind of style. So a totally different model of advertising. So that also engenders significant trust. I'm also very impressed with what Williams has done recently with the spin-off of Matter Studios, where he is creating a content creation investment vehicle so that independent content creators can be funded and can co-own, have a stake in their success. So they're addressing the need to support independent media in a new model that is not extractive, that is not privacy invasive, that does not fuel a fraudulent criminal adnet scheme. So is it perfect? No, because it's not open source. It's owned by a private company. It's not free and open software. It's not totally distributed and so on. I do know some people who are working on a blockchain-based ad tech in the future. And that probably is what will rise out of the ashes when the collapse occurs. And it'll be a totally public, distributed, transparent model where it'd be impossible to engage in deceptive, unscrupulous behavior.
So I'd like to thank David for coming out again, giving a marathon performance. Fantastic stuff. He said the first time over to David this evening, I said, how long was your talk? And he's like, about 10 minutes, I think. And he had a lot of stuff to talk about. It was great stuff. Thank you very much, David, for coming. Fascinating stuff. And thank you all for coming out tonight. And we'll see you again next month. We'll be back on the second Wednesday of next month, and we'll see you then. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.